Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great. It is always a pleasure to talk Disney Plus offerings.
There you go, yeah. Today we're going to be talking all about Lightyear, because that is the new big thing that came out to Disney Plus this last week. Apologies for the day's delay of this episode going live, but it was the new big thing that came out Wednesday. Wanted to make sure we had time to actually sit down and watch it, or rewatch it, and kind of put together thoughts before. Just trying to squeeze it in because we typically record these on Thursdays, and that would have just given like one day to really sit down and watch it. And we have work and lives and stuff like that. So,
Other things we're doing.
But yeah, today we're going to be talking all about Lightyear, which was originally released June 17th, 2022. So we're still in that like they're putting things on Disney Plus 45 days after release kind of time frame, which is nice because we just get to see them quicker. Did not do this movie well at the box office.
It did not.
I imagine a lot of families were like, well, I'll just wait until it comes to Disney Plus then. Right. So yeah, it was a little disappointing box office fare for Pixar, but such is the era we live in now. And they didn't get any kind of meme activity like Minions did with the Gentle Minions movement.
Right, yeah.
And there was also like a whole bunch of confusion that I'm sure we'll get into when we talk about the movie in terms of like, how is this tie into Toy Story? What is, all that stuff.
It's very confusing.
Yeah. But other releases of the time, we had Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness that come out in May 6th of this year. Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, which we did a That D Plus show on, came out May 20th. Top Gun Maverick, which is still like killing it at the box office these days, and the Bob's Burger movies, which is not
crazy. We have not seen this.
Came out May 27th. Jurassic World Dominion came out June 10th. We were talking about Jurassic Park and Jurassic World before we started recording. Lightyear there in June 17th. Elvis came out June 24th. Minions: The Rise of Gru came out July 1st. And Thor: Love and Thunder came out July 8th. Then we've probably had a couple other things that came out in the month since then, but that was as far as I went for the releases. Runtime of about an hour and 40 minutes. And in the Pixar timeline of things, we had Luca came out June 18th, 2021. Turning Red came out earlier this year, March 11th, 2022, and was the last of the straight to Disney Plus Pixar releases, which had been the case since Soul. So Lightyear was the first one that went back to theaters on June 17th. And Elemental is the next one up in the dock, coming out June 16th of next year, 2023. And then the next two that are like dated in Disney projections do not have official released titles yet. So there's a TBA slated for March of 2024. A little bit of the roll call on this. Our director is Angus MacLean. He's the writer and director of Lightyear. He was also the director of Finding Dory. And he's been working in Pixar animation since Jerry's Game and A Bug's Life. So basically came on board, I think, right after the original Toy Story.
So good.
The writers are, once again, Angus MacLean there. As we've already touched on, he did the story and screenplay. Matthew Ulrich also worked on the story of this. He is also behind Coco. And then he is credited on IMDb for the upcoming untitled Netflix and Chronicles of Narnia TV show, or TV movies. And then Jason Headley also worked on the story and screenplay of this, having previously worked on Onward, which was the last Pixar movie in theaters prior to this one. But even that had a brief run because of the pandemic that was cut short.
Right.
Starring, we have Chris Evans as Buzz Lightyear. Of course, from things like Not Another Teen Movie, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He's been, Captain America in the MCU for many, many years. Knives
Right.
Out. And then most recently, after Lightyear, he was most recently in The Gray Man for Netflix.
I need to check that out still.
Keke Palmer is playing Izzy Hawthorne here. She's in the Nickelodeon series True Jackson VP. She's in the Ice Age franchise. She's in the movie Hustlers. And most recently, and following this, she's in the movie Nope.
I have seen Nope. I realized right now that Keke Palmer is not playing both Izzy and her grandma.
Yep, that is correct. We will get to her grandma in a little bit. Peter Sohn playing Socks and Old Socks is probably best known to Pixar fans as Emile from Ratatouille or Squishy from Monsters University. He was also the director of The Good Dinosaur and will be the director of the upcoming movie Elemental. Taika Waititi in here as Mo Morrison, of course, from projects like What We Do in the Shadows, Green Lantern, Thor Ragnarok, Jojo Rabbit, Free Guy, Our Flag Means Death, and Thor Love and Thunder. And then also, I guess, The Mandalorian. He was also in that for Disney+. Dale Sewells playing Darby Steele was one of two actresses that are probably best known for their work on Orange is the New Black. She's one of the... I want to say she was like one of the kitchen people in early seasons of Orange is the New Black, but I don't quite remember.
It's possible.
Definitely one of those like old lifers in the women's prison in Orange is the New Black. James Brolin making the surprise appearance in this as Zurg / Old Buzz. Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen the movie. Playing, he has a prolific time in TV, going all the way back to the 70s with Marcus Welby, MD, as well as the original Westworld series that the new Westworld series is based upon, and the Amityville Horror. More recently,
he was in
Traffic, and of course, gotta shout him out as Governor Ritchie in The West Wing. Even though it's only 2 episodes, I think, on the West Wing, but an iconic couple of episodes.
Yeah, it's weird because he's mentioned obviously throughout a lot more, but yeah, I think it's just the debate and then the season 3 finale are the only two. At the opera.
Yeah,
which is crazy. Also predating Ron DeSantos is I'm an idiot who's just a terrible Florida governor dude by 20 years. So there you go.
Our second Orange is the New Black star, Uzo Aduba, is in here as Alicia Hawthorne, who you were alluding to earlier, kind of the grandma of Keke Palmer's character, and the early one that we meet of the Hawthorne family, best known as Suzanne Crazy Eyes from Orange is the New Black. And then we have a fun little flurry of they're in the movie, but they're more glorified cameos. One being Isaiah Whitlock Jr. Is Commander Burnside, who's probably best known as the pseudo-corrupt city councilman from The Wire, who always goes sheet with a million E's. Bill Hader is in here as Featheringham Sten, of course, from
Rookie.
Rookie, Saturday Night Live, and currently Barry. Efren Ramirez is playing Airman Diaz in his couple little scenes. Is probably best known to many people as Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh.
Mary McDonald Lewis is the voice of Ivan, and she's also the voice of OnStar. So basically, they tapped into her navigational prowess. And a director cameo from Angus MacLean as Eric / Derek, and who are basically the robots that, in particular, Derek is the one that gives directions, and I think Eric is another version of that robot that explains time dilation to Lightyear, and he also voices the Cyclops with the Zurg. In trivia, as with many of our Pixar movies, we have a lot of Pixar staples strewn throughout, including the first one that was in Turning Red, actually. Miriam had a number of Space Ranger decals on her skateboard as a tease for Lightyear being the next Pixar film to be released. Luxo Jr., which is the iconic Pixar lamp, can be seen as a constellation among the stars as Buzz is doing his test missions, his test flights. The Luxo ball is not in this, and that is one of the it's in most of the Pixar movies, but it does not make an appearance in this one. The Pizza Planet truck, however, which has been in everything except Incredibles, I believe, can be seen when Buzz and Socks are escaping to test the crystal fusion. The next film from Pixar is Elemental, as we touched on earlier, featuring a water-based character named Wade. In the vending machine that Mo gets the meat sandwiches from, you can see Wade Water as an option in that machine, as are Castle Cookies, which were in Onward. They can also be seen there. There is no John Ratzenberger cameo in this one, as he has not made an appearance since Onward. So they've finally put that Ratzenberger good luck charm thing to rest. Although, given that all of the other ones have not had any kind of financial success, maybe they should start bringing them back in.
Maybe he is the good luck charm, right? Yeah.
Featheringhamstan / Moe's suit is colored with that maroon color, which is a reference to early designs of Buzz Lightyear. Similarly, Darby's suit has the name Tempest on it as a reference to Toy Story test footage where Buzz was then named Tempest from Morph. Other fun little Toy Story references, of course, we have Buzz Lightyear to mission log. There appears to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere, as a callback line. Buzz karate chop action when he puts on his classic suit is a iconic little visual gag. He, of course, gets the wrist-mounted laser and the ejector wings, which would go on to be part of the iconic Buzz Lightyear suit. It's very much doing the solo, here's how everything comes together kind of framework, including the spaceship that Buzz and the team use at the end of the movie. It is very much designed to resemble the box that Buzz arrives in during the Toy Story series. And the fact that they're going on to a mission in the Gamma Quadrant of Sector 4, that is a recurring location where Buzz is doing missions from, both in Toy Story 2, I believe, is where the game is happening, and then also the Buzz Lightyear animated series featured them doing missions in the Gamma Quadrant of Sector 4. Other little Pixar references, the Monsters, Inc. yellow scream canisters double up in this film as oxygen tanks. And in the mid-credits laser shield scene, you can see a trophy of Bernie, who is the tiny little guy in WALL-E that is out there cleaning stuff, as well as one of the aliens from Toy Story. Both of those adorn Burnside's shelves as trophies, as little Easter eggs, cameos kind of thing. So yeah, there's our trivia for this one. Logan, what did you think of Lightyear?
It's interesting. I don't know. I think the analogy or the thing I put in Slack was there are a few films I feel like I've swung back and forth in terms of I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this, as much as Lightyear. I feel like literally 4, 5, 6 different times I was I think I like it now, and then I was oh, I don't like this. I think it comes together at the end in a way that I like. I think it is weird that they decided to make this movie a movie set within the Toy Story universe and not just its own story. That's a weird decision. It's completely unnecessary. Mm-hmm. And every now and again to be oh wait, this is just a movie. And I keep thinking that and be oh, but I'm sure they'll explain at the end it is just an actual thing that they based the movie out. But there was just nothing, and I was all right, yeah, they do it and then never acknowledge it again. So just sort of you didn't need that scroll at the top.
Yeah, the opening, the first thing you see in the movie is in 1995, a boy named Andy got a toy from his favorite movie. This is that movie, and it's all right, that's a weird. We didn't need that. That's a very weird framing device to give us.
Especially because they never go back to it. There's nothing at the end of Andy walking out and going to the store. There's nothing of Chris Evans actor, right? Mm-hmm. at the movie premiere, there's just like nothing about it ever again. It's like we could have just cut those like 5 seconds off, and no one would have cared.
I think
But
it was more like, because ever since this got announced, people were confused as to like, well, why is Chris Evans playing Buzz instead of Tim Allen? And wait, what do you like? So wait, this is a movie based on the character of Buzz Lightyear, not the toy Buzz Lightyear. And then, so this is basically explaining, well, the toy Buzz Lightyear is based on this movie character Buzz Lightyear. But as I agree with the sentiment that I think a lot of people have pointed out, is the idea of like, okay, well, except the problem is that if this was the movie that Andy saw, socks would be the toy that everybody wants coming away from this movie, not Buzz. Like everybody would want a socks toy. So the fact that socks was never before seen is like, helps break that reality a little bit. But yeah, it's a framing device that I just think they like, honestly, there's part of me that thinks they probably made the movie without that, and then people were so confused by the lack of Tim Allen-ness and all that stuff that they were like, all right, here's what we're gonna do to like explain it away. Here's a quick 5 seconds we can throw into the movie that will, justifiably explain it away or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, but that's not a great.
There's also just there's also the two things, like also the reason it's Chris Evans and not Tim Allen is because Chris Evans is a huge star coming off the biggest movie ever made, arguably, and Tim Allen's most popular thing was 25 years ago. To say nothing of the fact that like Tim Allen is like maybe like conservative problematic, right, as well. Didn't they just like, we can just like kind of go around this and just do Chris Evans, who everyone loves?
Yeah, I mean, he like conservative problematic, but it's also like they're doing a Santa Claus series for Disney Plus. So like Disney clearly doesn't have a problem with his conservatism. Like they're very happy to continue like working with him and banking in on it. It's just that Pixar wanted to go a different direction with this story, and so be it. But I think like a lot of people just didn't get past that or were thrown by. And then you also had like in the press around it, you had like Tom Hanks and Tim Allen being like, I don't know why they didn't just use Tim Allen for it. So like he clearly wasn't given the talking points, and then Tim Allen was very much like, yeah, I would have loved to have been done to have done it. I don't know why they didn't. So like he fed into it too, and it was like, yeah.
I'm sure for both those guys, like I'm sure they just didn't talk to them. Like they might have talked to Tim Allen, but like I'm sure Tom Hanks was not notified about the fact that they're not going to use Tim Allen. So when he found out, he was like, oh, that's weird. And like, that's, like, it seems like a whole weird thing, but like, I think Chris Evans did great. I like him a lot. I think the movie's I think we're in a really weird spot for Pixar movies right now. And we've talked about this a little bit, obviously, because we did episodes on Luca and Turning Red recently. I don't know, like, I think from, like, 1995 to, like, 2010, roughly, it was, like, a really incredible run that maybe in hindsight doesn't get enough credit for just how, like, consistent every single one of those movies was. Like, especially, like, from, like, Toy Story 2 was the first movie after Bug's Life. From, like, there until, like, Ratatouille, Up, WALL-E, like, that kind of trio to end it out was basically, they were all, like, phenomenal films, basically. Like, the weakest movie in there was Cars, and even that is still, like, a really good movie, right? And so I think it's maybe said for just, like, how great Pixar was when we were kind of growing up with it, right? When we were kind of first watching these movies and they were making a name for themselves. So that, like, now that they've maybe had a few more movies that are kind of like, yeah, The Good Dinosaur happened, and they've had, Turning Red and Luca, movies that are good, but maybe not amazing kind of thing. And more, besides that, I think Lightyear sort of fits more in that vein, maybe like among the best of these more recent movies. It's a weird movie though. Like, I think throughout watching it, there was a sense of like, I don't know if this movie knows what it wants to be a little bit. Both in like the themes it's going for, and then also, should I like Buzz even at times? I think it comes together really well at the end. I don't know how big the like Buzz Lightyear community is, but like definitely people are probably going to be upset about like the Emperor Zurg twist, I'm sure. But like, I think it's like I don't. I don't know even know if I like it, but I think it's really smart. I think it's a really cool way to like subvert that, even if I'm not sure I like it. But it's like that's just such a clever idea to like do that in the way they did, and even going to like the Beezerg thing is like it's just like this movie is really smart in how it lays out the breadcrumb to get you to that ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this movie more than any Pixar movie, save maybe The Incredibles, and even with like The Incredibles, like this movie is Pixar doing an action movie, and like it's Pixar doing like a space action movie. It's their Star Wars or it's their Star Trek kind of thing.
Right.
It was very fascinating because in the lead up to Lightyear coming out, because I did see it in theaters, and that week for this podcast I did the like Beyond Infinity, like the making of Lightyear documentary kind of thing. And there's a big chunk of that is like Buzz Lightyear is like on merchandise up the ass, and it's everywhere, and Buzz is everywhere, and it's on socks, and it's on toys, it's on all sorts of stuff that you can get. And they had a lot of like celebration of the character of Buzz Lightyear, as being the especially toy wise, the standout toy that came out of Toy Story, that like merchandising could get behind, because he was built to be that like the action figure everybody wants, with karate chop action, with the wings, with the lasers, with the helmet, all that. Like, so like he is the toy that anybody walking out of Toy Story wanted. And I guess like I guess for Andy, the toy, yeah, you might want this toy over a Socks the Cat kind of thing, who maybe the sister would want or something like that.
Right.
Because Buzz will have the karate chop action and the head and the headpiece and the cool, the voice activated, buttons and all that stuff. So it was very fascinating kind of like watching that and then going and seeing this movie, because one of the other there are themes that they touch on that I don't think I would have gleaned at all from just watching the film. And one of the big ones that they really touch on is how much of this movie was made during COVID. So there's like that element of this disconnect, which you do see, I think, through Buzz's journey in this of, he experiences basically like 2 weeks or whatever, while everyone around him experiences 80 years of life.
Right.
And another element that they really touch on a lot in the documentary is this idea that when they're at Pixar and their heads down on a movie, they basically like come out for air when the movie's done, and everybody around them, the world around them, has jumped forward 3 years in their life. And so like there's this weird element of like them kind of experiencing that time dilation just because of the focus that they're putting into those projects and stuff like that. And I was like, that is, I think, the most interesting aspect of this story is like if they had actually dealt with Buzz having to like come to terms with that.
Right.
And instead,
they flirt with, right.
Yeah, they flirt with it, but like really Buzz's conflict in this from the jump is he thinks he has to do it all himself. He doesn't trust that other people can help him get the job done. And that, we say that in the opening, and that leads to the crash. And then we see him like continuing to struggle with that until basically like everybody else kind of like forces him into it. Like he doesn't really have a turning point where he realizes that other people can help him. Until like they just show up to help him.
Right. He just sees them succeed in doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
And then finally at the end, he's like, they're my team. And it's like, yeah, you didn't really earn that though, Buzz. Like you didn't learn that lesson. And there's an element of that like is, I guess that's true to like the Buzz Lightyear toy that, ends up being created off of this. And we see a lot of that from Buzz. Buzz is very much like, I think I can do it all. I can fly. I can do all these things. And it's, like that first Toy Story, like both Buzz and Woody are kind of jerks and antagonists against one another. And So yeah, it's not until like Toy Story 2 that they like are buddy buddy and start really
Right,
like
yeah.
getting the whole everybody together. Um, but yeah, it's a weird aspect of Buzz, and like there are elements of that I like fine, but I think
Yeah.
that story of the space guy who thinks he can do it all is such a like tropey kind of story that they don't
Right.
bring anything new to it for me really.
Right.
Um because
It's
the
interesting.
really the interesting aspects are the fact that like his best friend
Yeah.
spent an entire life here, and he got to see like snippets of that life over the course of a
Yeah.
couple weeks, and then she's just gone and now he's alone, and it's like you everybody else has lived a life here, my guy.
Yeah.
You're the one that like is this like man out of time, quite literally, kind of element. um Everybody else was very happy to like adapt, and you just didn't.
That is the, I mean, that's the element that worked the best for me, I think, is whenever him and Izzy are talking, 2/3 the movie into the movie kind of thing, about how like, you know, it was just a waste, right? Like she wanted to matter, right? And Izzy goes like, she did matter to like a lot of people, right? She wasn't alone, right? Like she had, you know, Izzy's other grandmother, but also like, Izzy's dad and mom and her friends and everyone was there, right? Like the only person that she didn't have was Buzz, right? And I like it because it sort of juxtaposes the beginning of the movie, which does show her really sad that Buzz isn't there, right? Like at the end of the day, like she's sad that Buzz couldn't be with her and grow with her together over those 80 years, right?
Yeah.
And then you show the end.
Even sorry, just like even the little, and this is something I probably appreciated more like watching it, but like even in the montage of him going off and doing the missions, like every time she's driving him out to like the launch pad or whatever, she's like sadder and sadder that he's going on yet another mission. He keeps
Yeah.
his, like he's so obsessed with this, and you just see kind of her sadness. Like she's never happy to see him go, because
Right.
it has been 4+ years every time that she's gotten to see her best buddy.
Yeah. And I like the fact that, at that moment with Izzy near the end, it kind of again does this juxtaposition of like, we saw her at the beginning being really sad and Buzz being sad that she's gone to kind of give you that emotional punch, and then here in this moment it's kind of shown that like, but also she lived a really fulfilling, happy life, right? Like she wasn't obsessed about this like you were, Buzz. Like everyone here has built a community, right? Like they've made this their planet now over 80 years. Only you have been unable to accept that, right? And I think that works in the way that it then leads to, Buzz v Buzz at the end, and older Buzz never having had that moment and just being like, well, what does it matter? Like, well, I'll just wipe out all of it and we can win, save the day kind of thing. It's great. And Buzz now understanding that like, it also gets a little tricky because we get into like the multiple timeline aspect of it, but like it is the thing like, those lives are valid, right? And even if they won't miss them because they never know they happened, like I know they happened, right?
Mhm.
And they were valid and they mattered, even if they weren't space rangers, even if they weren't saving the galaxy kind of thing. That moment worked really well for me. Like for me in a lot of things, like I didn't like Buzz's, which is we've already kind of touched on, main journey of like, I didn't like Buzz being a jerk for a lot of this movie. I was like, why is he just like unnecessarily a jerk? And also because like I feel like they couldn't commit to it, because like Buzz's whole thing is that like, like to infinity and beyond, and like I'm doing this for everyone, and like I believe in people and their ability to like do great things, and like you see him with people and it's like, you're kind of an asshole though. Like I don't know which Buzz I'm like just to go for here, and like, and even like his dynamic with like the regular people not part of his team that he would interact with them, like, yeah, like you seem very jovial and very friendly with these people, and then you'll cut to them and be like, but that was kind of like a weird dick move. And so like I don't like, I feel like they couldn't, partially because it's a Pixar movie, probably they couldn't like commit to Buzz just being fully unlikable, but they also couldn't commit to like having to be like a likable dude, and they kind of fixated, I think, on like the wrong main theme for this message in terms of like him learning to accept help from others instead of like focus in more on you are this man out of time. What does that do to you? How do you kind of reconcile that? And that I think would have been a more interesting main focus for the film.
Yeah, because I think that like the emotional heartbeat moments are that, you know, that time he comes back and Alicia is gone and he just gets her recording and Alicia gets to say goodbye, but he never does. Or the, you know, the corrupted recording later on where Alicia is like, hey,
Princess
Socks,
Leia.
I need you. I need you to help out my friend. He's not here right now, but he'll be back. Like those moments in that relationship is, I mean, it's obviously also the first relationship we're introduced to in the movie.
Yeah.
While everybody else is like asleep on the ship, or Rookie, who just pops up out of nowhere. And so yeah, like they're our emotional anchor. And so it flirts with like moments like, you know, the opening of Up or whatever, and
Yeah.
and especially
Absolutely.
because it is like in that opening of Up, we see the journey of Carl and Ellie, and we see like start to finish of that story, and then go on from there. And this, it's such a like, it's just a much more one-sided journey.
Yeah.
Like we see
really
it is that like he doesn't sit with the fact that she has lived such a life until it's like beat into him by his daughter or by the granddaughter down the line. And it's because it is that like just this weird, and the movie doesn't like ever really like, it doesn't spell it out in terms of like how, I mean, it's theoretically been 15 missions because the ship is the X-15 or whatever. So if you're looking at like 4+ years each time he goes, plus that last one being, you know, 20 some odd years or whatever.
Years, yeah.
You know, you're looking at, yeah, like probably about 100 years that he has experienced over the course of maybe a month, depending on like how much downtime he's there. But like the movie definitely doesn't let us sit in his downtime, so it pretty much gives us the sense of like,
you think
he comes in and then the next
exactly.
day he's off to try it again. He takes whatever fuel they give him, and they all just go on about their lives for the next 4 years until he comes back. And so yeah, it's like that's like, give me that story. But then at the same time, I'm like, but is that the story I would have wanted when I was 10 years old? Probably not. And so I think there is like this juggling act that Pixar usually does a lot better, I think, of like making it kind of a real all ages kind of experience. And I think the action, probably very fun for a, you know, a 15 or younger, whatever it, like the child audience of this kind of movie. But then the emotional pathos that, you know, adults are going to really latch onto or like just isn't there necessarily.
Yeah, they keep giving you tease of it, but not the full thing you want, right? And like, I think it's so interesting too, like especially like that montage. Like I think there's so much there to build up, and like part of this might be because, like you said, like I obviously love Up so much, and I think we see like the realization of it there in terms of like what that executed really well can be. And I think the fact that we like get this like half step towards it, and it's like, all right, cool, this could be something really great, and then like they don't commit the other 50% is like, so much more frustrating. But like I do think there's so much good stuff there, right? And I like the idea too of like Buzz being so driven by making this, you know, mistake that like, yeah, he's got his head down so much that he literally spends, you know, 80 to 100 years ignoring life happening all around him, right? Like that's generations. He's literally on the third generation of his family now that he's missed just by trying to make things go right. And I think that is such a interesting idea, and you know, this kind of like workaholic mentality, and not just being able to like sit and relax and smell the roses, right? Like even the idea that he doesn't say, you know what, after like 2 jumps even, right? And he's lost 8 years now, whatever. It's like, I'm going to give it a couple of weeks to like try to figure out this better kind of thing. But he's just so like, I have to do it. And that he just misses his entire life with his best friend, like you said, and her best friend's, child even, right, is out of the scene. So like, I think that to me is so compelling. And then it also obviously introduces us to the best part of the entire movie, which is clearly Socks.
Yeah.
It was such a runaway star and so great and so funny. And both times Socks had like, I've given you 5 minutes, were delivered perfectly too.
Yeah. That was easily, those moments were easily like the biggest laugh out loud moments in the theater, of like the dart. Wait, was that for me? I've given you 5 minutes. Like that, just like beat perfect. And then just so much of like the rest of Socks. There's such joy and humor in Socks doing a thing that like you would expect to be a sound effect, but no, it's just a guy doing it as the voice.
Actually doing it.
Like,
and every time they commit to it too. They they show it to you every single time too.
Yeah, the white noise, that like all that stuff. While still also like enjoying the catisms of the fact that this robot is a cat, like
getting his belly rubbed is so funny.
Getting his belly rubbed when he
Socks?
Yeah, when he turns on the light, and gets distracted by the laser pointer version of the light, like just everything Socks does in this is a lot of fun, to the point that like, and I saw somebody else make this this assertion as well, so this is not like an original thought, but it's definitely something I thought as well, that like I don't think the movie would have done it, because I think it would have been a very different kind of movie if they had, but like that moment when Izzy and Socks are like having to climb across like, or try and grab something before they float off into space forever, and you see Socks start to do that, and then like at the last second Izzy grabs him, like there would have been it would have been an incredibly emotionally draining beat if she hadn't, and like she just had to see Socks go off. And I think in part because they'd already also killed off old Socks, because he'd been crushed by
he got fucking smashed. I couldn't believe that they actually just killed him. Like I thought he was gonna be like back later on, but he's dead.
It was one of those like, if like this version of Socks had gone off in that moment, and then they brought old Socks back with them to continue having Socks, like then they could have maybe gotten away with like Socks Prime going off into the abyss of space. But I think even that, like, too many kids would have cried in the movie theater, so I don't think they ever would have done it. But like that would have been like, oh, that's Pixar doing something that that was a bold choice in this movie.
Pixar having their Old Yeller moment
is otherwise a lot of like, it's a lot of like safe bets, I think.
I agree.
But yeah, like even Socks is a ton of fun. Peter Sohn,
Socks is so much fun,
knocking it out of the park in that role.
I think one of the things I like too is that like there actually aren't a ton of Pixar movies that focus on like a person and a pet, right? Like, again, Up is one of the exceptions to this, which is I think is part of why I like that movie so much, right? And I think there is just something like Pixar seems so obviously ripe for like a child or even an adult pet relationship story, because they can be so emotional and like,
I mean, that's what The Good Dinosaur is. The Good Dinosaur is a boy and his dog, like, but it's a dinosaur and his pet,
right?
His
and I
pet
think
boy.
It's harder to like, I think, put yourself in those shoes as much, right? But like, I think that it is so kind of universal, and people have such strong bonds with their pets that like, just instantly you fall in love with Socks. And Socks is so cute and so fun and so smart and clever and like willing to help and so like earnest that he's a perfect balance to Buzz. And I'm glad they cut him off, because like that really would have been like the blow. But like, I would love to see them build off of this. And yeah, let's have a Buzz and Socks, or a random character and random pet like storyline down the line for Pixar. I think would be great. But what we get here is such a standout. It is easily my favorite relationship of the movie, which I definitely didn't expect when Socks first got introduced. I was like, oh, he's gonna be like a gimmicky kind of character and he won't be in the movie that much, and he becomes one of the most important parts. And I love how, without even seeing like a montage even of Buzz and Socks being together, by the time Buzz comes back that last time, and Hawthorne is dead now, and he goes back and the program's over and all this kind of stuff, and he just goes back and all he has is Socks, and they try to take him. You immediately realize that, like, yeah, Socks probably is the only, I was gonna say person, the only like thing outside of Hawthorne that Buzz has talked to over 100 years. But even for him, just like over this like really intense month-long stretch, it's just been Socks every night and Hawthorne. And I like the idea that without having to like show it, they show how much that relationship matters to Buzz. And like the small stuff, like Socks does, like kind of like clawing around in the helmet when they're invisible, such a great bit. And the way they utilize Socks both being a robot and being a cat is so smart and so clever. And yeah, I just, easily the best part of the movie is Socks and Buzz's relationship. They're so fun.
Yeah. Another aspect that I think is like, is that like mix of, I like some of these moments, but a lot of them miss for me, is like the team dynamic.
Yeah.
Is the,
I'm glad you said this.
Like it is Izzy and Mo and Darby. Cause it's like, there are,
Mo in particular for me is very hit or miss.
Yeah, like Mo very much is like they cast Taika Waititi and were like relying on just Taika Waititi-isms, but then they didn't really write to some of his strengths.
Exactly.
So yeah, that was a, like, they basically were like, hey, so your thing for this entire movie is going to be an obsession with pens, for why not? And at least that one's going to pay off compared to like Darby, who gets like introduced with this like cool idea that's like, oh, this would be a perfect setup for something to come later, of like, she can make an explosive out of, like, she can take any three things and make an explosive, and then like just pay that off by having her grab three things from Darby from Mo at the end and make an explosion that takes out a Cyclops or two or something like that. And then they just don't. It's like, what? Like, then why did you give us that line at the beginning? Like,
don't you think someone would see this? Yeah, of course they would. It's on the, like, it was such a dumb.
Yeah. So like, there, at the same time, like, there are moments with them that I like, like when she is out there, like, or like when Buzz basically gives her guns and she's like, this is against my parole or whatever. He's like, I'm giving you the authority to kind of do. It's like, okay, like there are fun like juxtaposition moments where they get to, they play with that a little bit. But
when she was in the back with like the rocket launcher, I liked that moment with her and Mo a lot.
Yeah. Or when she's like complaining to them about like, hey, there are explosives back here, please drive safer.
Be careful.
Yeah, like little bits like that are fun, but like it's like, I don't know, maybe I've just gotten tired of the like band of misfits kind of like vibe of a team. Sure. And this, again, just doesn't do enough new to really like warrant it in the way that, like, so often when Pixar introduces these kinds of things, they make them memorable. And
I also think Izzy is really unmemorable to me. Like, I like, even with like the like 10 minutes with her grandma seems is just way more of like an engaging, interesting character. And I think the problem with Izzy is that like she's essentially like the second straight man, right? Because you already have Buzz as like the straight man, and then Mo and Darby is kind of just like outrageous characters, and Izzy is sort of essentially playing a second straight man. And it's like, well, we don't need two of this kind of like archetype. And her like big reveal moment of like she's afraid of space is like a little bit, like Buzz said, like weird for someone who's so obsessed with like space rangers in space that like she's afraid of it. And then like her moment is cool, like, and there's one particular shot of like her from like above, and the camera's looking kind of at her from above, that like is a really cool striking shot of like the emptiness and vastness of space where there's literally nothing but black in her. But otherwise, like, her being afraid of space and her kind of having to do her like little moment didn't do a lot for me. And I found her character arc in a lot of ways like the least engaging, even more than like Mo's arc with finally getting a pin in his new suit, which is like, Izzy was just kind of like, yeah, okay, like they wanted to have Hawthorne without, having Hawthorne, so they could have like the emotional beats. So they did like the next best thing, which is fine. but like it sort of makes her like a generic character a little bit.
Yeah, it is that like if she was another, just like, she wasn't really trying to do this, she was another random recruit like the others, but doesn't really like space, like that character beat fits way better than
I agree.
the one from even that like first little introduction when we see young Izzy in the hologram and she wants to be a space ranger. The fact that she has wanted to be a space ranger all her life and has this like aversion to space is just like,
has read all of her grandma's space books like front to back 2 times. She makes a point of that too. Yeah. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Like that just like is a character flaw beat for the sake of a character flaw beat that doesn't really like match up with everything else that they've set up with this character.
About the character, yeah.
So yeah, I think that is like a weaker, a weaker aspect of it. And then yeah, it is just like the one like bonding, sequence that the team has together of, figuring out how to escape the cones thing and then having their weird little like meat sandwich
meat bread
is like, okay, why are we spending so much time talking about meat sandwiches? Like, how is like, is this going to tie into some kind of bigger? No, it's just a, hey, you've been gone a long time, here's how things have changed. It's like, that's a really weird way to show that's how things have changed. So yeah, it's
especially because like to that point too, like Buzz says at the end of the movie, like, Starlog like 4019, right? It's like basically, yeah, we're in like year like 4000 now. So for thousands of years, we've had sandwiches one way, and then in this like 80-year switch, all of a sudden we've just started eating sandwiches differently, and the idea of sandwiches being made the normal way is like completely laughable, and it's like how soon did we change this to where like their grandkids find that utterly unbelievable? Like it's like such a weird like bit to like, it's
especially because like Darby is quite old, so she was around for plenty of the time where they were doing and normal like sandwiches,
immediately changed it, like the year Buzz left the first movie. He's like, you know what, let's switch our sandwiches. Like otherwise, Darby's like 70 years old, very clearly is an old lady with like gray hair. And it's weird too because like it sort of reminds me of like what was one of my favorite recurring gags of the movie, which was that very first like Z-Bot like chasing after them throughout the movie, which is, and like after that great fight, which that fight is really great and utilizes all the people's like skills, and then missing one arm, it chases after him like very slowly throughout the entire film, and like sort of a comedic Terminator vibe to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I kept being like, I'm so excited to see how this is going to pay off. Like it's gonna be such a cool moment when they finally meet it face to face. I was like, oh, maybe it's gonna actually be like a good one kind of thing, and like want to like be there, but like I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's gonna be great. And then you finally get to that moment after everything has happened, and like it stands up, tries to kill them, and is just immediately shot from behind by the commander. And it's like, what was the point of any of this? Like that could have just ended at their first meeting. It had no payoff at the end. There was no like comedic beat. There was no sort of like laugh. There was no sort of like story like necessity to it. Like what a weird thing to do then. Because I thought it was such a cool thing, and I was so excited for what it was going to build to, and then it just had nothing. And like that, I feel like having this conversation with you is sort of like maybe my biggest frustration with Lightyear, is that like they had a lot of things they kept doing over and over and over again to be like, this is going to be important later on. And then like it never really paid off. Like she can build a bomb out of any 3 things. Don't worry about it though. This robot's been chasing after them for the entire movie, going to all the same beats they have. Don't worry about it though. Like here's Buzz's like existential crisis about like being a man at a time, but like don't really worry about it kind of thing. And it's like, why are we like doing these things? And like I don't understand. Like it was just such a weird letdown for such a cool idea, and then to spend 5 minutes on bread, meat, meat for just to have a conversation about it. Like it was a funny scene, but it was also just kind of like, all right, like cool, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that is another runner that I think does like lacks a payoff. Because like I was the same way. I spent like the first time, and then I think even more so the second time, because I think Like the second time I was watching, I was like, I don't even remember how this resolves.
Yeah.
And there are a couple times where like because like it's it's an interesting beat because it is a character that I don't think after that first encounter, I don't think they know ever that it is on
No,
their
they
tail.
never do.
Like
No.
any other time they encounter it, it's either like a step behind, is like,
Yeah.
still hunting and trying to catch up with them, or like before Buzz gets taken up to the Zurg ship, like they crash into it in over the lava flats or whatever, but like they don't know that it was that Cyclops or anything. Like
Right.
it's so it's like this weird one-sided hunting kind of thing, but
Yeah.
for a character that we have no connection
attachment
to, no attachment to.
Yeah.
Like if we got like if even in just one of those they gave us this weird like little monologue of like why he's so determined to hunt or whatever,
Right.
or we see that like that Zurg is somehow controlling that one specifically, like that would have been some kind of weird payoff for this, but like we never get that. And then it just kind of is like they come back down and it's there as like one last threat that immediately gets taken out by a complete third party that has had nothing to do with any of this the entire rest of the time. So yeah, it is another one of those just like like has like an interesting setup and then just like they forget to do any payoff to it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the big kind of like Zergness of it. I'll jump in first and say like I enjoyed especially everything leading up to the reveal of like how they were doing like the Jaws thing for him, or like he was
I agree.
a menacing thing. You saw a silhouette, you saw like parts of him, you saw like the shape of him, you saw like intimidating pieces of him. And then like when you finally do see the full version of him and like he comes out and it is this weird like it knows that the audience of this knows that in Toy Story 2 they did the whole like I'm your father Star Wars thing. So how are they going to write around that? What are they going to do with that? And so they give it that little like allusion to it with Buzz thinking it's his father, until like the reveal is no, this is a Buzz, an alternate Buzz that like has been living with this like failure so much longer and continuing to try and right that wrong, and he has become warped. His mind has become warped by that. Like it is, I think, an interesting element.
Right.
And then like they just kind of like hand wave away that like, oh, he just couldn't, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't go any further back in time. And it's like, but why though? Just really just so you could set up this conflict, I guess. That's really the only like
I was ready for it to be like, oh, like the like fuel cell like ran out of like gas, or like even something dumb like that. I've been like, all right, cool, that's enough reason for me. Sure, like it's out of whatever. But they were just like, I couldn't go back any further.
Yeah.
Couldn't be bothered.
Yep.
It's like, oh, okay.
And it's like, so like it's weird because there are moments in this movie, and admittedly I've never seen Interstellar, but I very much know that like the time dilation element is very much a key focal point of Interstellar.
Right.
And so like so much of this movie is like Interstellar but for kids, but then it also is like, oh, but we're actually not going to delve as deeply as we could into some of these ideas or some of these theories or whatever. And so yeah, he just ends up being a bad guy for bad guy's sake, which is like so I mean like in a degree it is that, well, yeah, he has been an unlikable character, so if he didn't come across this ragtag bunch of misfits, he would have been alone for the entirety of his time, except for these robots that he found and hijacked. And we don't really get like, even that would be maybe an interesting story compared to like the random Sentinel one that continues to follow. Like, show me, like, give me a sequence of alternate Buzz going into the future time and time and time again and finding like this, like coming across all this, and how did he acquire all of this technology? How did he acquire the Zurg ship, the Zurg suit? How did that all happen? But we don't get that. We just get like they don't do a show, like they do the tell don't show kind of thing. They don't show us this cool aspect they just tell us it happened. It's like, okay, but like that could have been an interesting 15 minutes that you could have put into this movie, instead of meat bread meat, or instead of the runners that don't pay off.
Right.
So yeah, and then another one that I can't take credit for, but I did see somebody highlight was like, if that had been the voice of Tim Allen, that would have been an interesting way to like at least like tie the whole thing full circle. At the same point, I'm like, cool. I get, because their rationale is like, you know, the voice actor in the movie is not necessarily the voice actor of the toy. So it's like, I get that. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But it is this weird, just like, okay, so you threw in an old Buzz into the mix and cast James Brolin. It's like, okay, he's fine. He shows up. He does what he's asked to do, but he doesn't. Even he's not like a memorable part of this movie, apart from being like bad guy to be bad guy.
I actually would have liked it more if it was bad guy to be bad guy, right? Like that's sort of my thing. Like if it had just been Emperor Zurg is just Emperor Zurg because he's bad, and that's like all you need, and have been like, yeah, I almost would have found that more interesting. I agree that the twist of like it is just older Buzz is like intriguing and like a really cool idea, but a little bit like what you said for some of the other things, I just don't know if they execute well on it for me. And it gets tricky too because it is a beat that is so tied up into like timey-wimey like space shit that like it's easy to get lost in as well, right? Like we are both people who've seen enough Doctor Who to know to be like, yeah, like multiple timelines, shit's gonna get confusing, and you better like be ready for it. And like they kind of explain it, and they're also just kind of like, he's a bad version of old Buzz. And like for me, it's more like I'd have rather it have been Buzz's dad, who was like, you know, a renowned space ranger who went mad looking for a son, maybe, or who like wanted glory or something like that. And like that makes more sense because for Buzz, at least for me, like despite him being like this weird kind of jerky, you know, asshole dude, I never really bought Buzz as like someone who could just, you know, go evil to that degree, or like, you know, he doesn't think it's evil kind of thing, but you know what I mean. And like, so like it even comes across strange because it's like, yeah, like even Buzz without friends still is like so committed to like the ideals of space rangers that like this doesn't feel like that. And so it's also that thing of like, I rather it just have been his dad or just a generic robot who is bad, and like that maybe would have played better for me. Especially with like how intense old Buzz gets so quickly too, right? Like he has a very small fuse and then is out here murdering his presumably only friend for like who knows how long old Buzz has been alive for, right? It's like, because he's hella old. And so like for hundreds of years, presumably, it's just been him and Socks, and he smashes that dude with no, you know, remorse at all. And it's like, is that really what Buzz, like, I don't like, because even if the timeline for the two of them is exactly the same, except for, you know, new Buzz meets the friends and the other one doesn't, and stays alone and just keeps failing again and again and again. He still had Socks, and they both still liked him the same before they met the friends. So, like, it's weird that he would just like smash it. And that came like, again, like I couldn't believe they did that in the movie. I was like, holy shit, they actually murdered that cat. And so yeah, like it's a weird villain beat. The last act is sort of a mixture of like things I really like and things I really don't. But like I think that is also sort of a perfect description of the movie at large. It's just like things I like, things I don't, things that I think are really interesting that then sort of are like half-baked and not fully executed on. And I think what better example of that than both Buzz Prime and Old Buzz, who are just sort of like, I like this, but I don't like this, kind of thing.
Yeah. That's it. Like when they're escaping, and the action moment is like things explode a second quicker than they were expecting or whatever, and Buzz basically has to scramble, gets the helmet on just before he falls out into space,
Yeah, it's a cool shot.
Like gets to his old ship, which had been like already teleported up there, so he's able to grab onto that, and then like Windsor like latches on, is like, ha ha ha, I'm going to still win the day. And Buzz's only recourse is to finally hit that eject button and like abandon the mission, so to speak. It's like a fun little beat that is then also heightened when those wings go out and you're like, the thing is complete now. Cool. I wasn't even looking for it at that point, but when it happened, I was like, I'm all in for this. And then they do the RC car moment from the movie, and I was like, I'm happy. There, like all of those little moments that I like that were specifically playing to nostalgia and like your memories of the Toy Story and where you've seen these these moments from this character before and stuff. Like they all got me, even though I know it's a very cynical thing that they all got me. They still got me, and they're fun, and like I enjoyed them and had a smile on my face anytime any of them like happened.
That's a great example of something that I again like and don't like. Like I think that shot of him like sliding down and like snapping the helmet on at the last possible moment is such a cool like framed shot and kind of like drift into space, and then him like ejecting out of the thing, and like I couldn't believe that they had him destroy the fuel source. Like I was so convinced about this movie that like he was going to go back and obviously save the day. Like somehow someone to do like keep the timeline intact, but also go and save the day and go like back to Earth and see his Earth people or whatever. And then when he destroyed it, I was like, oh shit! Like I mean, my mind was like, how are they going to like work around this kind of thing? And they don't. They just have that be thing, which is really cool. I was decidedly less excited and in love with the idea of like Buzz like helping like lift and steer a like ship out of the sky. Like that was more just like, this is like, even by like Pixar space standards, this seems a little like, that is incredibly unbelievable kind of thing. Like it's different from like an RC car kind of thing, but like it's also just like the bottom was like very so like hot and flaming. It's like I understand what we're doing, but like there are still going into the Earth or planet's atmosphere. Like it is molten lava hot still here, kind of thing. It's like, all right, I guess.
And they at least like highlight that like the thing's still like they're in control of it. He's just kind of like bracing it and steadying it. So like to give them that, I will say like tying into the like it's he sacrifices the fuel source. It's also like, well, it's also weird that like early in the movie, like that's set up as the last fuel source, all because Sox loses the formula, which was basically just like 4 numbers. It was like, how do these 4 things need to be put into these percentages? And it took him 60 some odd years to figure out or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, and you didn't have that backed up anywhere to even just remember 4 numbers. That's a weird thing just for the sake of giving this like a sense of urgency plot. Okay, fine.
62 years from now, I guess we'll figure it out again, right? Like, or maybe he'll get it quicker. Like,
and also the fact that like a cat that is not designed at all for this was able to figure that out, and like scientists,
no one else
that were on an interplanetary mission couldn't figure it out is very odd.
Nope. Don't worry about it.
How didn't they not have that like formula?
One person
there
job
just in
was
case,
to do that.
As like, hey, in case our fuel source ever goes out, we should probably know how to make it again.
Right. I also thought it was interesting that like throughout the entire movie, like Buzz obviously is like calling in to like doing like mission log kind of things. I really did think that like part of this is why I thought that he was going to go back to Earth and like Buzz was going to be like a huge star, or like the whole point was that like no one even listens to those, and like in reality like they were listening to like his mission updates the entire time back on Earth, and like Buzz became like world famous kind of thing. And I thought that was a potential like ending beat, or I thought that like, at the end when like the fuel source is destroyed, like, oh, maybe again, people on Earth heard those and they like sent out a rescue mission that took, 80 years to get here kind of thing. And they're going to like get here at this like end of the movie kind of thing. And neither one's happens. And it is just Buzz just talking into the thing for no reason, apparently. And it's like, all right, that's a weird
it's
habit, I guess, too.
It's Kirk in every episode of Star Trek. Like it's not like those are ever being listened to by it's just the mission log. It's the like, here's the recording for, you know, when archival stuff happens. I always got the impression of like, oh yeah, it's just like being sent to a very like centralized or localized kind of instance. It's not being broadcast out to the world or anything like that. But yeah. And I mean, like, I appreciate that they start the movie out like just making fun of him for it and being like, you know, nobody listens to those things.
Which is the fact they made that joke is why I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna come back into play later. Like someone's gonna listen to this, and it's like, nope, no one is.
Nope.
And it's like, oh, okay.
No, he's just talking to his wrist to narrate when.
Yeah.
And it is that like element of, well, there are only so many ways you can justify a character who is all by himself talking to himself. And that's how they did it for this one. Yeah. Any last favorite moments or least favorite moments that you want to touch on before we wrap up and give us a grade?
I think the invisibility cloak thing is cool. I think that the sequence is sort of dumb. The alien things are actually pretty creepy, which is a nice little scene. And then, like, I think the slow evolution of the suits Buzz is wearing is really cool, both in terms of, like, get-in gear, but also in terms of the OG suits that him and Hawthorne were at the beginning to, you know, then he's kind of, like, without it, to then him decking out his team in the middle of the movie with the suits, to then, like, them getting, like, the Buzz Lightyear suits at the movie's end is like really cool to see the arc of that. And I thought that was really neat and kind of the last little like, oh shit, like we are, full circle here to Buzz Lightyear, the movie, the toy being real.
Yeah. There are definitely a lot of moments in this movie where I find myself thinking the Solo effect or something like that. I think this does for the most part things better than Solo does, just because
I think this does Solo better than Solo does.
Yeah, just because so many like there are definitely good things I think
Buzz
in Solo.
Lightyear.
I still think like Donald Glover in Solo is better than like most of this movie as Lando. But it's because he's not being really held to the like Solo, the bad aspects of Solo, kind of doing the Solo things of like, let's tell the origin story. Let's answer every question you didn't have about the origin of this character.
Yeah, Lando and Socks are free to do what they want.
Yeah,
Lando and Socks are free to do what they want.
Yeah,
just have fun.
Yeah, and I was like, there are also like super deep cutty things that like the two trivia things that I pulled of like the Moe's suit being like a reference to an earlier design of Buzz Lightyear, or the Tempest being a reference to Buzz Lightyear before he was named Buzz Lightyear. Like those are super deep cuts that like 99% of people are going to be lost on 99% of people. I know them because I saw those elements being referenced in the like making of the documentary kind of thing. But like, yeah, so much of it is just like, oh, that's like interesting.
A hell of a pull.
Why is one of these suits like maroon? What is that just like, oh, that was a mining version of this suit? Okay, well,
he's a red shirt from Star Trek.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, it's like there are elements like, oh, that's cool, but that is going to be lost on most of your audience. So
even me as someone who's seen essentially every Pixar movie, certainly every like Toy Story movie, knows Buzz Lightyear very well, watched like the animated show back in the 90s. Like even I did not know until the trivia section. I was like, all right, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, like it's still a fun enough movie. But yeah, yes. it definitely like does not reach the highs that Pixar very much set for themselves.
Exactly.
And it like, I mean, I would gladly watch this over any Minions movie ever. But
never seen a Minions movie.
At the same time, like I probably don't ever need to watch this again myself. Like
I have it like, I mean, we're sort of like drifting into there. So like, I mean, like in terms of like what I would give it report card kind of thing. But like, you know, I looked at my letterbox for Pixar right before we started recording actually. And I was like, yeah, like I would have this ahead of Cars probably, or right around Cars territory for me. Like I think this is like a mid-pack Pixar movie, maybe upper mid-pack. It's really weird. Like, that's the thing. Like, I think Cars is consistently good, and I sort of defend Cars a little bit because I think it is just like pretty good all the way across the board. It's never bad. It's never really exceptional. It's just like, that's a really good movie. And I think Lightyear is not like that in any way. I think Lightyear is like really great and then really weird and really great and like kind of up and down, but like comes to like, yeah, this is good. And so like I would give Lightyear probably like a 7 out of 10, like a C plus B minus kind of range, like probably just do a C plus. But like I think it is definitely not the worst Pixar movie, and it's also a thing of like, we talk about a lot when it's like we're grading on a hell of a curve too, like in a Pixar movie thing, like yeah, like Pixar movies are good, like they're very very good, like
especially
you have
the ones with the Toy Story lineage, save
right
arguably Toy Story 4. But like
right.
Toy Story 1, 2, 3 are among the best movies ever made. And
right, they're all literally all of those are masterpieces, right? Like that's the thing. Like in Pixar's case, like you have probably close to 10 movies that are all like masterpieces or near masterpieces films. And so it's like, yeah, that's a really hard like curve to grade on, right? Like it's a little bit like what we talked about a lot with like that bunch of like, we're grading on a curve here. Like these movies, yeah, like you just have to kind of get graded based on what you're a part of. And like Lightyear is a part of a really great lineage of films, and it is definitely not the worst or weakest part of that. Like I'd rather watch this than Monsters University, and I like Monsters University, right? Like there are still movies that I enjoy that I'd rather watch this over, and I wouldn't even hate watching this again, but I would probably do it in like a lot more selective way of being like, I'm going in, this is like we talked about before we started recording, this is a 90s action movie, and just enjoy that and like not think I'm going to get necessarily more than that. And I think this movie's great for that.
Even that, like, there is an element, especially with the setup that they give you of like, this is the movie that Andy loved.
It's a weird movie
in 1995. It's like, okay, then lean into the 90isms of this that like they could have leaned into, but no, this is a 2022 movie that is like claiming it was a 1995 movie, just to justify why this isn't the toy
for
we
no
all
reason.
know.
Yeah, for no reason.
It's a weird thing. Like even if it had been like this was a movie like inspired by like, or like this is a Buzz Lightyear reboot movie or something like that. We're in that era. Like you could have just done that.
Yeah.
But it's a weird thing. I'm probably a little cooler because I probably give it a C myself, just kind of a flat C. Again, I don't like, and maybe that's because I have a second viewing of it that I'm coming into. But yeah, it's like it's definitely not bad by any means. It's just not great. And when there are so many great Pixar movies to go out and enjoy, like I would sooner sit down with any of those than hop back into this one again.
I think that's fair.
But yeah. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. Unsurprisingly,
you might have heard of these movies.
Toy Story, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, and Toy Story 4. Beyond Infinity, which is that documentary that I mentioned. I want to say it's like 45 minutes or something like that. It's kind of the making of Lightyear here. Turning Red, Luca, and Soul. So basically the 3 Pixar movies prior to this one.
I like, again, out of that list of movies, this is not my least favorite, I will say.
There you go. Which of those? Were you cooler on one of the recent ones or Toy Story 4?
I would say I like this more than Turning Red.
Turning Red? Oh, okay.
Turning Red is Turning Red's a great example, though, not to like linger on it for too long, but like Turning Red is also another movie where like we had this, go check out that D Plus show about it, where like there's a lot I like about Turning Red, especially in like the first half of that movie. There's a ton I really love about what the movie does, and then like that
and
ending
just
does not
places
work
that you were not expecting it to go.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for me at all.
Yeah, that's fair. Extracurriculars. Are you watching anything else on Disney Plus these days, Logan?
I feel like I just watched something on Disney Plus recently, so maybe. What am I watching Disney Plus? I think we probably watched a Pixar movie recently. Or a Disney movie recently on Disney Plus. I can't remember what it is. There's a lot happening. We started watching Ned's Declassified on Netflix, which is an old Nickelodeon show from the early 2000s, and we started watching Only Murders in the Building.
On Hulu,
which is on Hulu,
Yeah.
which I really, really like. Those are not Disney Plus shows, but I wanted to talk about them because I think Only Murders in the Building is great.
That's fair. I had a busy week on Disney Plus this week. In addition to rewatching this, I as I have been doing, I checked in season 3 of High School Musical, the series, is had its second episode, so I watched that. And it's just dumb, campy silliness. Emphasis on the campy this time, as they're taking place at summer camp. I watched the Marvel Assembled for the Miss Marvel series, kind of the making of Miss Marvel.
I got to check that out. Yeah,
I think especially I think you would enjoy that. I mean, wasn't really like filled with surprises or anything, because it very much is like, hey, we really wanted to put Kamala's culture into this, which you see all through that series. But still really cool. It was especially interesting because the directors of that, like, getting to see them gush about and like talk about this project basically right after Batgirl has been shelved and canceled, that they were working on, is like, it's a weird, like, oh, that's a weird timing. But then the other thing that I've been watching that I think you would also enjoy is Light and Magic, which is a 6-part documentary series on industrial light and magic.
ILM, I saw this. Flowing around.
I've watched the first 2 episodes of it, which is basically like everything leading up to Star Wars has launched. So it is like them putting everything together with ILM.
Cool.
And then that's basically episode 1 is that, and then episode 2 is, okay, George has finished filming the movie, and now they have to do all of the special effects stuff. So
they got to fix it in post.
It is a stretched out version of like the first half of Empire of Dreams, which is the documentary on Star Wars.
Empire Dreams.
And like the first half of Empire of Dreams is basically like everything leading up to Star Wars releasing. And so that's the first 2 episodes of this. So the next 4 episodes to continue, I think, are going to go into the rest of the trilogy, but then beyond Star Wars. Like, I know the episode 6, I think, is making the T-Rexes and stuff from Jurassic Park. I think is so like it's how they're going to continue doing industrial light and magic. So it is it's a 6-part documentary series on the company. With like it's produced and directed by Lawrence Kasdan, which is interesting. But then also just like Ron Howard and Brian Grazer are also in there, and like the producer chairs, and like they're in there, like, or at least like Ron Howard, Steven Spielberg are in there doing like reviews. There's a ton of like archival footage, not only from like the ILM people, but like from like home movies that the ILM people made before they were ILM people, kind of thing, is fascinating little, snippets into their lives and stuff like that.
That's one of the things I find most interesting about George Lucas. We could do an entire podcast just on George Lucas. I find George Lucas endlessly fascinating.
I mean, he's in a lot of these, like doing like modern like retrospective and look back. Like, I don't know when these were like shot and filmed and stuff, but it's modern day George Lucas.
But like, I like his list of like friends, especially in like directing circles, is just like the greatest directors of all time, right? Like, it is like Francis Ford Coppola and Ron Howard, obviously, who he had in American Graffiti, and Steven Spielberg and Brian De Palma, right? And like, it is just like absurd circle of like new Hollywood directors or new Hollywood inspired directors. And there's like a great picture that I saw on Twitter. It's so funny we're talking about this like over the weekend, of like them at some sort of like, it looks like 90s award show, and it's like all of these directors at a table together, and it's like, holy shit, that's an incredible friend group right there. Like, it, like, when you have to like literally be like, I don't know who's the most talented person in this friend group, and it includes like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, that's a hell of a friend group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have like clips of Lucas making a documentary of Coppola making Finnegan's Rainbow, I think, and basically like they talk about it in this, talking about the fact that they were the only two people on that film, on like making that film, who were under 50, and basically like they were the new class. And then they start a company together, and it tanks after THX, like the full length version of THX fails. So Coppola like challenges Lucas to make American Graffiti, and then Coppola goes off and makes The Godfather. And it's like, yep, they were just doing the thing back in the 70s.
It is
wild
crazy
to think about. Yeah.
One underrated thing too, I would say, is that like American Graffiti is legitimately a great movie, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
the thing too. Like it's so slept on because like his follow up is Star Wars. But, like American Graffiti is like in its own right a fantastic film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we talked about that on the Empire of Dreams episode of that D Plus show of like, yeah, like it's one of those, like, I had always heard about American Graffiti, but until watching that and like doing the trivia and stuff for that D Plus show, like I had never realized how big American Graffiti was, because it pales in comparison to Star Wars a couple years
the
later.
biggest movie of all time, right? Just like, but like it was a great, and it's like a great, and like that's how so many great actors that we know either got their starts or kind of made a comeback in Ron Howard's case,
like
right?
Ron Howard's in there talking about like he talks about being cast in that after like 6 months of auditions or whatever, and then he does a little impression of like George Lucas basically telling him, well, yeah, it took him that long to pick the cars too. So he talks about, or Ron Howard talks about Lucas in the same way I think we kind of talked about him after coming out of Empire of Dreams as well, of like Lucas is not great at directing actors. And even in this, like Lucas talks about the idea that he's not great at writing a script necessarily, in referencing like the original Star Wars, but like he has such an eye for the details and the ideas that he wants to see. Mm-hmm. But he's
got a vision of what he wants to achieve. Yeah.
And they talk about the idea that like Star Wars was 25% of what George wanted the movie to be. Mm-hmm. And the fact that like he continued to change it as often as he could over the years, certainly I think feeds into that. But yeah, I've watched the first 2 episodes of I think a 6-part series. Like each episode's probably about an hour, and I'm just looking forward to continuing on with that journey. So definitely recommend it to anybody else out there who's fascinated by that stuff. But yeah, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Logan, for joining me to talk about Lightyear. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie, Loggy. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
I would give a shout out to Cameron's most recent Let's Play of Dying Light, Friday Night Dying Light.
Yep.
I shouldn't try to just plagiarize a show that exists. It always tricks me up. We are winding down. He has recorded the last episode of the series, but they're still going live for about the next month and a half, 2 months. So go check that out, kind of get the conclusion of Cameron's journey there. It is very, very exciting. And then myself and Trevor, it's already live, just did a episode on That Nerdy Site show about Everything Everywhere All at Once this past week that you can already go check out live. It is very good. It's a very great movie. I think it is each of ours either favorite movie so far this year or in strong contention for that honor. And so go check out our conversation around that film as well.
Indeed. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will echo those shout outs as well as shout out our Let's Plays. This week's Let's Plays were, I believe, As Dusk Falls.
Yep.
And what was the other one that I did? I recorded them like weeks ago, so it's
Power Wash Simulator.
Was that the one that started out this week?
No, I'm just giving.
It might have been.
It's all the buzz now. I see it in the timeline.
Yeah, it might have been that. Let's see if I can pull that up. What do I have? Yeah. So As Dusk Falls was yesterday. Live Alive. That was the other one. Live Alive. So yeah, go check out our Let's Plays every Tuesday and Thursday over on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. I want to sit.
Maybe we'll have Power Wash Simulator.
I want to sit down this weekend. I think I'm going to try and sit down with Thirsty Suitors, which is the next game from Outer Loop Studios, the team behind Falcon Age. It has a demo out on Steam that I want to check out. It's an Annapurna game. Should be a fun one. So yeah, that's one that's on the docket somewhere. Whenever I get around to it. So go check out all of our Let's Plays over there. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed to infinity and beyond.